There is something deeply terrifying about the way The Boys handles power. Not because the superheroes are strong, not because the violence is brutal, but because every season quietly proves the same horrifying truth over and over again. In this world, perception matters more than reality. And nobody understands that better than Homelander. Because if there is one thing Homelander has mastered, it is turning fear into loyalty. That is exactly why Firecracker's death may become the most dangerous thing to ever happen to America. Not because she matters politically, not because she was powerful, but because Homelander finally has something even more valuable than control. He has a martyr complex. And the scariest part? I do not think he is going to waste it. Because if this theory is right, Homelander is about to turn Firecracker's murder into a national war against Starlight, and the country is probably going to cheer while it happens. The moment Firecracker entered the story, she was never really just another soup. The show framed her as something much more dangerous. She represented propaganda weaponized into human form. She was not built to defeat enemies physically. She was built to manipulate audiences emotionally. Every live stream, every conspiracy theory, every fake emotional speech she gave was designed to accomplish one thing: create outrage. And outrage is Homelander's favorite currency. That is why their partnership always felt bigger than attraction or political alliance. Homelander saw something useful in Firecracker. She understood modern fear the same way he did. Facts no longer matter in this world. Emotion does. Whoever controls public emotion controls reality. That is why Starlight has become such a threat, not because she is stronger than Homelander, not because she can beat him in a fight, but because she represents the last major public figure still trying to tell people the truth. And truth is dangerous to authoritarian systems, especially one being built by Homelander. What makes this theory terrifying is how perfectly Firecracker's death fits into Homelander's long-term evolution throughout the series. Early Homelander wanted love. Then he wanted obedience. But now he wants ideological devotion. He does not just want fans anymore. He wants believers. That is a massive difference. Believers do not question contradictions. Believers do not need evidence. Believers only need enemies. And Firecracker's death could give Homelander the perfect enemy to unite people against. Starlight. Think about how easily the narrative could be manipulated. Firecracker was already publicly positioned as one of Homelander's loudest supporters. She built her identity around exposing Starlight, attacking her morality, and framing her as the face of corruption inside Vought. To Homelander's supporters, Firecracker was not just an influencer, she was a soldier in the culture war. So what happens if she suddenly dies? The public will demand someone to blame. And Homelander understands something terrifying about human psychology. People prefer emotional answers over truthful ones. Especially during grief. Especially during fear. Especially during chaos. That means he does not even need proof against Starlight. He only needs a story. And Homelander is very good at stories. We already saw this evolution beginning in previous seasons. Every time Homelander faced consequences, he reframed himself as the victim. Every scandal became persecution. Every criticism became an attack on real Americans. Every enemy became proof that society was trying to silence him. That rhetoric mirrors real-world political extremism in uncomfortable ways, and the show knows exactly what it is doing. Because Homelander has stopped behaving like a celebrity. He behaves like a cult leader. And cult leaders survive by creating emotional warfare. That is why Firecracker's death would become useful to him almost immediately. He could stand in front of cameras pretending to mourn her while quietly transforming her into propaganda. Not a person, a symbol. A patriotic victim destroyed by the enemies of America. And once that narrative spreads online, it becomes almost impossible to stop. That is the truly horrifying thing about the world of The Boys. Information moves faster than truth. People choose narratives that validate their emotions. Homelander supporters already want to hate Starlight. Firecracker's death would simply give them permission to escalate that hatred. And honestly, the show has already set this up perfectly. Firecracker spent so much time publicly attacking Starlight that her death automatically creates suspicion around her. It does not matter whether Starlight actually had anything to do with it. Public perception would already be poisoned before the investigation even begins. That is how propaganda works. You do not prove guilt. You emotionally imply it until people stop caring about evidence. And Homelander understands that better than anyone. But this theory becomes even darker when you realize what Homelander truly gains from the situation. Because this would not just be about revenge. It would be about consolidation of power. Imagine the headlines inside the world of the boys. Starlight extremists suspected in Firecracker assassination. Anti-Homelander hate campaign turns deadly. Are soup liberals radicalizing violence? The fear would spread instantly. And fear creates dependency. People would begin looking to Homelander for protection. Exactly what he wants. This is the same strategy authoritarian figures have used throughout history. Create instability, create outrage, then present yourself as the only person capable of restoring order. Homelander does not need democracy anymore because emotionally panicked people willingly surrender freedom if they think it keeps them safe. That is why Firecracker's death could become a turning point for the entire series. Not because of the murder itself, but because of what Homelander could build from it. A movement, a holy war, a national justification to destroy dissent. And Starlight would become the perfect target, because she emotionally threatens everything Homelander represents. She exposes lies. She inspires independent thought. She encourages people to question authority. Authoritarian systems hate people like that. But there is another layer to this theory that makes it even more tragic. I think Homelander may genuinely convince himself he is right. That is the scariest part of his psychology now. Earlier versions of Homelander understood morality enough to know he was pretending. But modern Homelander increasingly behaves like someone who truly believes his own mythology. He sees himself as America itself, which means any attack on his supporters feels personal. Sacred, even. So if Firecracker dies, Homelander may not simply manipulate public grief. He may emotionally consume it. He may actually see her as a fallen patriot murdered by enemies trying to destroy the country he thinks he is saving. That delusion makes him infinitely more dangerous because irrational leaders stop calculating consequences. They escalate emotionally. And if Homelander emotionally declares war on Starlight, things could spiral faster than ever before. Because Starlight has already lost control of the narrative multiple times throughout the series. Even when she tells the truth, people twist it against her. Every apology becomes weakness. Every emotional reaction becomes evidence of instability. Firecracker understood exactly how to weaponize that against her. Which means, even in death, Firecracker could continue destroying Starlight's life. That feels intentional, almost poetic in a horrifying way. Firecracker's greatest weapon was never her influence alone. It was her ability to emotionally infect audiences with suspicion. And once suspicion spreads publicly, truth becomes irrelevant. That is why I think Homelander's response to her death will not be subtle. It will be theatrical. Massive memorials, televised speeches, patriotic imagery, probably even Christian symbolism framing Firecracker as a righteous martyr sacrificed by evil forces. Because Homelander understands spectacle better than politicians do. He knows modern audiences consume emotion visually. And once Firecracker becomes an emotional symbol instead of a real person, she becomes infinitely more useful dead than alive. That sounds brutal to say, but that is exactly how Homelander thinks now. People are assets, emotions are weapons, fear is power, and war creates loyalty. The most disturbing possibility? This entire situation could finally push Starlight toward total emotional collapse. Because unlike Homelander, Starlight still has a conscience. Imagine watching millions of people blame you for something you did not do, while the most powerful man on Earth manipulates the country into hating you. That pressure could destroy anyone. And Homelander would love that. Because psychologically, Homelander does not just want to defeat Starlight physically. He wants to erase her symbolically. He wants the public to stop seeing her as hope. That is why destroying her reputation matters more than killing her. A dead martyr could inspire resistance. But a hated, publicly disgraced Starlight? That destroys resistance emotionally. And that may ultimately become Homelander's final strategy heading into the endgame of the boys. Not defeating his enemies through strength, but convincing the world they deserve to be destroyed. Which is why Firecracker's death could become the spark that transforms America completely. Not overnight, not through military conquest, but through narrative manipulation, one emotional story at a time. And if that happens, the truly terrifying part is that millions of people inside this world will probably think Homelander is saving them, while he destroys the last pieces of democracy right in front of them.